This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who, at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meatpackers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. I'm going to entitle the show, How to Lose a Presidential Election. The president is doing his best to try to lose that election, and let me explain why. And Larry Klayman, from his personal capacity, the third person, talking like George H.W. Bush, would like to see him win. So this is constructive advice, not like the so-called advice that you get from Sean Hannity, who's become a groupie. First it was Michael Cohen, then it was other people, and now it's the president. Anybody in and around the president, Hannity sucks up to. And last Thursday, he did an interview with the president. I wouldn't call it an interview. It was just simply a fluff piece with the president, asked him no tough questions, and just basically tried to cover for him. On the contrary, you have Tucker Carlson, who's taking the same line that I'm taking, but the president is making a huge mistake. He looks weak. He's not enforcing the rule of law. You've got this radical leftists, radical blacks, radical atheists, radical feminists, the Jewish left, radical Muslims. You've got everybody out there in the streets tearing this country down, and the president just talks. He doesn't act. Over and over again. If the local mayors and governors don't do anything about it, particularly with regard to Seattle, then I will. This has been going on now for 2.5 weeks. It's not credible. And then with regard to the COVID-19 virus, which was caused by the communist Chinese, there's a story to that. We actually gave them the seeds of that, but they turned it into a bioweapon. We'll talk more about this later. The president just calls it Kung Flu virus. It's not enough to be cute. It's not enough to play politics. He admitted last week that he was playing politics, that he's going to let the Democrats look bad, and this is going to help him in the election. But at the same time, you've got statues of Jesus Christ that they want to destroy. You've got statues of Abraham Lincoln. You've got name changes on virtually everything. They now even want to remove the name of the Masters golf tournament. Obviously, Masters refers to great golfers, doesn't refer to slaveholders, okay? Soon we're going to have a situation where the word white will be banned from the dictionary. We won't have white anymore. You won't be able to buy a white car. You won't be able to have a white hat. You won't be able to have white pants. Anything white will be banned, because what this has become is a jihad against white people, particularly white males and white cops. Anybody who's white has been called a racist. In fact, there are some of these radicals out there saying that whites were born with this genetically to be racist, and it's just unbelievable. So the president needs to step up to the plate. This is not a race war between white and black. This is what these radicals want. They're using the black people, and most people, those black people are good people. They're using them to wage a Bolshevik revolution. They're being used as pawns to do that. There's financing coming, most likely from George Soros, most likely from Russia, China, North Korea, and Venezuela. Yes, that would be the real collusion, wouldn't it? And the president just sits there and talks. Now, look at the Chinese situation. It's not just a Chinese virus. It's not just a Kung Flu. Why isn't the president joining Freedom Watch in bringing lawsuits or having his worthless attorney general, who I call Puxatawny Bill after the groundhog in Puxatawny, Pennsylvania, that runs back into his hole nearly every February 2nd, or maybe Blowhard Bill, or maybe Billy Boy Bill. I've got lots of nicknames for this guy, but I'll tell you something. One nickname he's not going to have is Do Something Bill, because the guy is totally worthless. The only thing he's done in the last several months, or for that matter, a year, is to have the indictment and plea agreement of General Flynn dismissed. Now, Flynn is an insider. I like the general, but he's part of the Washington establishment. So help him out. But the rest of the American people, go take a hike. Be damned. The American people are counting on you. People are afraid. They're buying guns in droves. People that never had guns before are buying guns to protect themselves. And they should, frankly, not to use offensively, but defensively, because sooner or later, they're going to get to your neighborhood. They're going to get to your house. They're going to demand ownership of your house and your car and everything you own. And if you don't, they'll kill you. There's already been a lot of deaths. There's been a lot of maiming. Look what's happening in Chicago. Look what's going to happen probably this weekend. Look at what happened in Seattle. People have been killed there, all over. These were the calls of Louis Farrakhan of the Nation of Islam. Kill the whitey, kill the Jew, kill the Christian. This is what he has been preaching. Black Lives Matter, not much different at all, frankly, and nor the rest of the radical black movement that hates Jews, that hates Christians. They're primarily black Muslims. They do not like Jews. They do not like whites. That's a fact. They're separatists. They think they're better. Ironically, they call whites white supremacists, but they are black supremacists. And there's no place for supremacy of any kind in this country for anybody that's listening, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Google, or whatever. This is not hate speech. This is reality. And it's time that the majority stand up for its rights too. In California, for instance, you now have the legislature saying, let's put affirmative action back on the ballot for November's election. Let's go back to discrimination again, which Ronald Reagan tried to remove and did in large part. How do you feel when you walk into a doctor's office who got his degree through affirmative action? Do you feel real comfortable? And nor is it fair for the really intelligent, smart black people out there that earn their degree because they're just as intelligent as whites or anybody else. It degrades who you are. And it's time that we all stand on an equal footing. So, Mr. President, do your job. Shape up or ship out, because you're losing your base. I support you. I want you to win the next election. The alternative is frightening. Joe Biden will probably die within days, if not months, if he makes it that far. We're going to wind up with some radical black female vice president that hates whites and hates everybody else. Not only that, is a socialist or a communist or whatever. And we're going to be living under that dictatorial rule for either 4 to 8 years. The country is changing, and we need to stand up for the values of our founding fathers. We need to stand up to the communist Chinese. And what does it look like? And this is what Carlson was saying, because I send him my podcast in the morning, and he basically copied one. He even made reference to the fact that Duke University, which has become the Berkeley of the South, is a problem along with other universities. Now, Tucker didn't go to Duke, so he's obviously listened to me. I give him credit for that, even though he helped defame through Roger Stone my client, Jerry Corsi. So this is something which we need to be candid and honest, not like Hannity. You don't become a cheerleader. You don't become a groupie. You don't become somebody who sucks up because you want to be in the inner circle. You become, if you're on Fox News, and there are very few that will do it, like Tucker Carlson, or like Larry Klayman, or like other people who are speaking up. Because you know what? White people have rights too. It's not just blacks. It's not just Muslims. It's not just atheists. It's just not feminists. It's not, we all have the same rights. And that's the basis upon which this country was founded. So I urge you to support Freedom Watch. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and contribute to our cause. Join our Justice League. Become part of the solution, not the problem. And I might add, Ronald Reagan would never have allowed this to happen. He never would have sat there laughing, looking at what's going on, saying, oh, aren't the Democrats losing votes? And that's what the president's doing. But you know what? He's losing votes, because I've talked to people in the last 2 weeks. His support base is dwindling. That's why he filled up only 1/3 of the stadium in Tulsa. Because if you lose respect for our president, he will lose the next election, surer than anything else. And consequently, that's why we need to have tough love right now, because we don't want him to lose. We want him to win. And he's got to man up, and he's got to do his job, and he's got to fight for us, the American people, because otherwise there are going to be people in the streets, people on the far right, the neo-Nazis, the Klan. They're not even rightists. They're just, I don't know what they are. They're barbarians. And then you got the barbarians on the left, and it's going to be a bloodbath, and I don't want to see that. So consequently, we need a president who's doing the job. And if he doesn't do the job, he'll be out, and he'll be out quickly. Now, he's done some good things, but the reality is that you're only as good as the last thing you do. I mean, lawyers say that. You're only as good as the last case you win or the last case you lose. And right now, our president is losing, and we're losing too. And we're losing control of the country because, once it goes, it'll never come back. Believe me, it'll never come back unless there's a violent revolution, and we don't want to see that. And Jefferson predicted this. And we've got problems with our judges, and we're going to talk about that later in the show. I don't have any guests today because I want to talk to you straight up. But the president bragged with Hannity that he appointed and got confirmed 300 judges. You know what? Those judges aren't worth, generally speaking, an SH, excuse the French, SH. They're not worth a darn. I've been in front of many of them. They're establishment Republican hacks that are afraid of their shadow. And we see what's happening now with the Supreme Court, with Chief Justice John Roberts and even others that were appointed by this president. They're running for the fences. And, it's just not right. Our founding fathers would not run for the fences. They pledged their honor, their lives, and their fortunes to form a new nation. And our politicians and people in Congress, frankly, want the next meal from the next lobbyist. That's about it. So I'm going to be right back with the second segment, the Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Listen carefully, share this podcast, share this radio show, because time is short as this country is slipping down the drain. Be right back.
Dangerous.
Don't care. Use the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special Prosecutor
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
We do today at Freedom Watch what I used to do at Judicial Watch. When I founded it in 1994 on July 29th, 1994, 26 years ago, the motto of Judicial Watch was to investigate and prosecute government corruption and abuse, and also in the legal system. When I left, Tom Fitton, who's not a lawyer, wanted to have it conform to the fact that he's not a lawyer. He hadn't even graduated from college at the time I left. He lied to me and said that he had, but he didn't. He turned it into transparency in government primarily, which is fine, okay? Get the documents, but then use them. Now, Freedom Watch doesn't just get documents. We bring hard-hitting lawsuits. Now, sometimes we succeed, sometimes we fail. It's largely a part of our judiciary that in the federal sense, the state judiciary is much better, particularly in Florida and states like that, which are trial lawyer states. But generally speaking, we're in court and we're trying to make a change. We're trying to enforce the rule of law in our Constitution in the best way that we can through the courts without violence or anything else. And we also have our citizens' grand juries, which are totally appropriate and legal, and that'll be reconvening when this coronavirus dies down. Now, it's just one example, and I'm going to give you a few more. We have a lawsuit, and last Friday we filed an opposition to a motion to dismiss by little Pete Buttigieg, and Elizabeth Warren's not far behind, is that she was sued, and so was Buttigieg, because on the birthday of Trayvon Martin, they called my client, George Zimmerman, who was acquitted of murder with his defense of self-defense, they called him a white supremacist and someone who believes in gun violence. Now, George Zimmerman, this is how the media destroys you and others destroy you, was actually helping black kids in the inner city in and around Orlando before this whole event. George Zimmerman was followed. He did not follow Trayvon Martin. Trayvon Martin was having a bad night with his girlfriend. He had broken up with him. He was also on marijuana or some other drug. And he attacked George Zimmerman, and George Zimmerman acted in self-defense. And he didn't even try to kill Trayvon Martin with his firearm. Thank God he had it on him. But it happened. Those things happen. And it's sad and it's tragic. But Buttigieg and Warren, on the birthday of Trayvon Martin this year, not long ago, when they were doing really bad in the black community in terms of votes, because, one thing about black people, they can spot a phony. They know what a fraud is all about. Black people are good. Black people have actually a lot of common sense to them, generally speaking. They knew that Buttigieg and Warren were frauds, but they tried to get their votes. And how did they do it? By trashing George Zimmerman on the birthday of Trayvon Martin, by calling him a white supremacist and someone who believes in gun violence. Now, white supremacy, that's not an opinion. Look at Webster's dictionary, Merriam-Webster's dictionary. It's someone who believes that the white race is superior to any other race, particularly the black race. Who believed that? Adolf Hitler, the Aryan race, okay? He didn't even consider Jews to be white. I actually consider myself white, but who knows? I don't know what I am. I'm a Jewish Christian. But anyway, we sued Buttigieg and Warren. Now, who would do that but Larry Klayman and George Zimmerman? And so we're responding today to that motion to dismiss, which is totally frivolous. Now, we may have a hard time. The case was so-called randomly assigned to an African-American Obama judge. I hope that she plays it straight. I'm not going to insult her, but we'll see what happens. And we may have to go to the 11th Circuit on that, and we'll see what they do. And we may have to go to the Supremes, and we'll see what they do. Now, our federal court system is broken. And, in cases like this, it's very difficult. But we're right here, and we will continue to fight regardless. And, we have our lawsuits, and I'm going to talk about that going into the next segment as well, against Google, YouTube, against Instagram, against Apple, against Twitter. We have our lawsuits against Antifa. We have our lawsuits for Judge Roy Moore, which was also assigned to an African-American appointee, and I hope he plays it straight. Over and over and over again, these federal judges are very, very politicized. They pay back their benefactors. How did they get to be federal judges? Generally through campaign contributions by their law firms or their corporations or labor unions or other special interests. The lobbyists line the pockets of the senator and the president to get their guy on the bench. There's two judges on the bench right now that I've had cases with, one Democrat, one Republican, both from WilmerHale. Now, coincidentally, the law firm of Robert Mueller and Jeannie Rhee of the famous Russian collusion witch hunts. Now, they were very happy to get them on the bench because they bundled contributions, this law firm, and now they can say to their clients, we've got our judges on the bench. We've got them in our hip pocket. And that's the way it works. So we are fighting, and that's why we're using citizens' grand juries to hold people accountable. I'll be right back.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
Now, fellow patriots, people of conservative orientation, of faith, of all races. And I might add, my railing against black radicals and other radicals, it is the African-American conservative who is the most courageous person in this country today. I wrote a column last week for WorldNet Daily to that effect. You've got the Alan Keyseses, you've got the Larry Elders, you've got the Armstrong Williamses, you've got Justice Clarence Thomas. I can go on and on and on. Of course, Candace Owen. These people were speaking up as white people are running for the exits for cover. And you know what? What happens when you walk down the street and a vicious dog thinks that you're scared of him? What happens then? He bites you. He might even kill you. And this is what they're seeing right now. So we've given a carte blanche to these radicals to go after us and to try to kill us, if not to try to kill the country. Let there be no mistake about it, okay? They want us dead. They want us dead. And that's a reality. So this is why we're fighting. And who's helping them? The social media is helping them. The Googles, the YouTubes, the Facebooks, the Apples, the Twitters. You see, these people that run these social media companies are so rich. They have so much money stashed away, much like our politicians in Washington, D.C. to a lesser extent. They've got a lot of money, too, believe me, stuffing money into their pockets. But they don't care. I mean, they'll even pay 90% taxes and still wind up with hundreds of millions of dollars. But they don't pay 90% taxes because of all the tax loopholes. They make sure through their lobbyists that those loopholes exist and continue. These people are radical leftists. They're revolutionaries. They're confused. They're not stupid, though, because they know what they want and they're achieving it. And most of it is located in Northern California in Silicon Valley. And that is the scariest part of all because, California is a great state. It's the biggest state, but a state with the most innovation, a great agricultural industry, a great cultural industry, the movie industry, which is our biggest export, at least it used to be. But the state is controlled by these radical leftists. They now also want to put affirmative action back on the ballot. So yes, we are fighting against Google, YouTube. And, again, just talk. All we hear is talk from my alma mater, the Antitrust Division of the Department of Justice or the Federal Trade Commission, or talk from Senator Ted Cruz, or talk when it comes to China from, others on Capitol Hill, like Tom Cotton. I'm tired of the talk. I feel like throwing a shoe through the television screen, but I don't do that because I'll have to buy another one. But because I want to use it to watch the Golf Channel or the Tennis Channel or some other channel. I turn the news on for about 10 minutes in the morning, and then I turn it off, and then I read, what's on my phone. I can't take it anymore. I can't watch Hannity. And, everybody I talk to, although he has 4 million viewers, they can't stand the guy. I mean, it's just unreal. Same monologue every night, major breaking news, the arrogance of this guy, the hypocrisy of this guy. And this is what you see, not just from him, but you see it obviously from MSNBC and CNN. So we're in the courts fighting. We're doing something. It's not just BS on cable news. And, of course, we have our case against Antifa, too. That was up on the Ninth Circuit a few weeks ago. We did that by Zoom because of the coronavirus. We did that 3 years ago. What has the president done against Antifa? During that interview with Hannity last night, he says, we've locked up hundreds of people. You know what? If he had locked up anybody, we would have seen that on cable news. We would have seen that on CNN and MSNBC. They haven't locked up anybody. In fact, who's getting locked up? We're getting locked in our houses by these crazy governors and everybody else. We're the ones that are being locked up. So, stop the BS, President. And everybody else has to stop it, too, because the American people are smart. They know what's going on. And then we have our lawsuit for Judge Roy Moore, who's a good man, a good Christian man. Who else but Larry Klayman would stand up for Judge Roy Moore? The poor guy's been destroyed. Same thing for Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Judge Moore never molested any woman. He dated some people that were over the age of 15 when he was very, very young, and that was it, and that was legal in Alabama, but they tried to destroy him. And Sacha Baron Cohen comes along, and others come along from the Democrat Party and smear him as a pedophile. And so we filed lawsuits, and those are going through the courts. I'm hopeful that the case that we filed against the Democratic Party, which really smeared him badly in a number of different ways, goes forward. I think we may have found one of the few really good Trump judges down there, and we'll see what happens. Maybe the only one to date, but I'm holding my breath. We have a lawsuit, as I said, in New York City. We tried to file it in Washington, but an establishment Republican judge, Thomas Hogan, transferred it to New York. He didn't want the hot potato in his courtroom and wound up with an Obama African-American judge. So far, the judge has treated Moore fairly, but he's taken a very long time. It's now a year and a half. This is not a hard issue. You know what? And we'll see what happens in the end. We have a status conference next Tuesday. But why a year and a half? Sacha Baron Cohen invites Judge Moore to Washington, D.C. to accept an award for his support of Israel. The evangelical Christian community is more supportive of Israel than the Jewish left. The Jewish left would support the Palestinians and does, before their own people. In fact, the Jewish left is vile. It is a threat to the Jewish people. It is a threat to their existence. You see a lot of them in Hollywood. They're self-hating. They're like George Soros, who confiscated the property of Jews going to gas chambers and is proud of it. He did a 60-minute interview many years ago, and he was asked, do you feel bad about that? He says, no, I don't feel bad about that. And this is the Jewish left. Not everybody in Hollywood's like that, I might add. But, a lot of them are. And so Judge Moore, who's an evangelical and a Christian, he loves Israel. So he accepts an invitation by Sacha Baron Cohen and this fictitious network called Yerushalayim TV to go to Washington, D.C. to get an award because it's the 60th anniversary or 70th of Israel's independence. And he's very proud to go, and he takes his wife Kayla with him. When he gets there, he gets a little skeptical of what's going on. They give him a release to sign. He crosses out, there can be no discussion of anything dealing with sexual content. Sacha Baron Cohen comes in and interviews Judge Roy Moore. He's dressed as an Israeli Mossad agent. During the course of that interview, he holds up a wand. He says the Israeli Defense Forces have developed a detector for pedophiles, and it starts beeping. And Judge Moore, seeing what's going on, leaves the set. Now, after that happened, our very fine local counsel down there in Alabama, Melissa Isaac, who, by the way, represents a lot of males in family cases. She's kind of like the reverse of Gloria Allred. She sends a letter to CBS, Showtime, and Sacha Baron Cohen saying, you can't do this. This is defamatory. Because Showtime was what was behind this, although he was invited up by Yerushalayim TV, which, frankly, was a front. It was a sham. And tells them not to broadcast this. But they do it anyway. They don't care. They don't care who they hurt. So we bring a lawsuit. And the lawsuit winds up, as I said, in Washington. It was transferred to New York City, a very leftist place, and it's in front of this African-American Obama appointee right now. He tried to settle the case to his credit, but the arrogant Showtime, represented by a law firm that profits from all of this, just simply says no, arrogant. They think they've got the judge in the hip pocket. Now, I got a status conference on Tuesday, but, you have to fight. You have to try. I did the same thing with Sheriff Joe Arpaio when they called him a convicted felon and wound up in front of Judge Royce Lambert, who I thought would have the courage to do something. But even he bailed out. It tells you where we are today. I've lost my faith, for the most part, in the federal judiciary. And Thomas Jefferson had the same lack of faith. He didn't want there to be federal judges. He said they're non-elected, they're going to become despots, and it's going to get so bad that they break away from the American people that someday we're going to have to spill the blood of patriots to restore this country. That's where we are. And I don't want that to happen. And that's why we continue to fight. And I'm trying to file as many cases in state court as possible. Now, in the next week or so, I'm going to be filing another case. Again, you got to keep punching. Got to be punching legally. For 6 Philadelphia policemen, a group called the Plainview Project broke into their Twitter and Facebook accounts, their private accounts, which is a crime, which is illegal, and pulled it out and turned over those things to the district attorney in Philadelphia, Larry Krasner, who was elected with the money of George Soros. Also the mayor, Mayor Kenney, ultra-leftist, a real hack, and the then police commissioner, who since has been removed for sexual harassment. They fire hundreds of Philadelphia policemen without any due process. First offense in any police department, including the Philadelphia Police Department, is you get reprimanded. They say, don't do it again. But here, these people are fired and they lose their livelihood, their families, particularly during the coronavirus. And I write to the mayor. I write to the district attorney. I write to the current police chief. Believe it or not, her name is Danielle Outlaw. They took her from Portland, Oregon. Of course, she's African-American. They needed some cover there. She's not even qualified to be police commissioner. And that's no slap against African-Americans, because there are many, like my client, Demetric Penny, who are qualified, but she is not. She's just simply a placeholder. They don't even respond. So you know what? They're getting sued for reverse discrimination. reverse discrimination against white cops. Because you know what? A black female cop just in the last few weeks tweeted that white people shouldn't bother wearing masks over COVID-19. Just put on a hood of the Ku Klux Klan because you're all racist. I'm paraphrasing. You know what happened to her? Nothing. Not zilch. Nothing. The minorities in this country have become a protected species. They can do whatever they want. And again, the president is sending the message that they can do whatever they want. And except he bucks it off onto local and state officials and sits there watching, saying, oh, this will help me win the next election. So Sean Hannity, you're not doing the country any service by being the president's apologist and groupie. You need to give him some tough love like I'm giving him and like Tucker Carlson is giving him, because we want him to succeed. We don't want him to fail. And that's very important. Now, this is another thing that came out during the Hannity interview. I listened to 3 minutes or more of the president extolling the virtues of Roger Stone, now, and others, Manafort and others. Now, we got to set the record straight, and Hannity knows better, and he's simply a liar. Okay, Hannity is dishonest. I dealt with him during the Clinton years. He went behind my back with my clients, put them on, lied to me, over and over and over again. But here's how he's lying again. Roger Stone was persecuted. Well, you know what? Roger Stone, whatever the jury foreman believed, didn't present a defense, not one witness, not even himself. Now, this blowhard, this is someone who offends people, who put a crosshairs to the head of the judge in that case. Really smart, huh? A wise guy, someone who idolizes the mafia, and that's no joke, and that was part of that case. I sat there for 2 weeks, didn't present one witness, not even himself. So he doesn't want a new trial because he'll be convicted even faster than in the first trial. And this is the reality here, is that you can't lie under oath. You can't intimidate witnesses. You can't defame people like he has with Corsi and me because he feared that Corsi was going to testify against him. Corsi didn't want to testify against him. He was just simply going to tell the truth. And the testimony was benign. But Stone can't help himself. And now he says if he goes to prison, it's a death sentence. No death sentence. These prisons now have cleared out anybody that has anything with COVID-19 involved. And he would be going to Georgia if, in fact, he goes. But I have cases against Roger Stone. And I say this, President, for your next term, associate with good people. Don't associate with bad people. You are who you associate with. And that's another piece of tough love. When you associate with people like this, you start to smell like it. You know the expression. I'm going to be right back with the verdict section of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman, because you need to think hard and fast, because our country is slipping away and our president is AWOL, absent. He's not there right now, and we need to snap him out of it, and he needs to get back, and he needs to be the fighter that we know him to be. I'll be right back.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
This is the verdict, fellow patriots, friends. One of the things that we also need to do is to legally and peacefully clean house in our own house, in the conservative movement. There are those out there, such as Christopher Ruddy of Newsmax, who play both sides of the street. This is someone who gave $1 million to the Clinton Foundation. This is someone who professes to be a conservative. This is someone who professes to be the friend of Donald Trump. He does that, obviously, to try to increase his prestige and his reach. But Christopher Ruddy is alleged to have participated with Roger Stone in defaming Dr. Jerome Corsi, my client, and there's a lawsuit pending against Newsmax. Now, when I asked him for documents as to his communications over the defamation that occurred, and what happened is they put this person on by the name of Cassandra Fairbanks, who then called Corsi a serial liar, in effect, accused him of plagiarism, and accuses him of committing a fraud with regard to a doctor in Fort Lauderdale, all of which is false. I asked Ruddy to correct it on Newsmax because Ruddy was my, quote, friend. Okay, I knew him all the way back to Richard Mellon Scaife and with regard to Vince Foster and everything else. He did abandon me when I ran for the U.S. Senate in Florida. He went again with someone who could do him a favor, Mel Martinez, who he thought, had the ear of George W. Bush. That's the way he is. He's an opportunist. But I asked him to correct it. He said, no, Larry, I'm not correcting. If you don't like it, sue me. So you know what? I sued him for Corsi. And then when I asked him for documents, he lied about it under oath. They didn't have any documents, which he did because I had some of his documents because I was writing to him saying, you need to correct this. These are the kinds of people that you need to know about, whether it's Hannity or it's others. If you want to watch a good network, tune into the local affiliates of Sinclair. These people are truly conservatives. There's 300 networks throughout the United States. In fact, in a major market, the chairman of Sinclair told me once, David Smith, we have more viewers in one day in a major market that Fox News has in an entire month. If any network actually played a role in helping the president get elected to get a fair message out in 2016, it was Sinclair. So pay attention to that. Because the FEC says that major networks can only own about 30% of local networks, Sinclair moved in legally and purchased many of those networks. They also own the sports networks. They own Fox Sports and some others, the Tennis Channel. They're really fine people over there. Eric Bolling, people that were thrown out of Fox News for trumped up allegations, or James Rosen or others, they're now working with Sinclair. So I urge you to, follow what's going on over there. And I urge you to share my podcast every day and to share this radio show because we need to get the word out. Education is very important. The reason that this country is in such trouble is because leftist universities like my alma mater, Duke, which became leftist. It wasn't leftist when I went to it. I was a proud alumnus. No way I would ever send anybody to Duke today. Remember the lacrosse team, how they tried to lynch those guys? Similar to what's going on now. White lacrosse players, because a female, a couple of them came forward and said that they were raped. They weren't raped. It's the same thing. They allowed Muslim prayer in the middle of campus when they wouldn't allow it for any other religion, disrupting what was going on in the library and everything else. And when, some of the alumni objected, of course, they had to modify that policy. They become the Berkeley of the South. And then, of course, we have Berkeley, which is the bastion of communism. So we need to understand that our younger people, the millennials, have been educated in this leftist Marxist ideology. They've been educated to become anti-Semites and anti-Christians. And this is not going away. This is a cancer which has already taken hold. We're in stage 3 of that cancer right now, and we need to reverse it. So you need to share this radio show. You need to share the podcast on Radio America. I thank Radio America for allowing me to tell the truth as I see it every single day. And you need to be discerning on who you're watching and what you allow your kids to watch. Because right now, we're not just in an actual revolution, we're in a cultural revolution. And of course, that's what happens. So go to freedomwatchusa.org, support our cause, join and see if you qualify for our COVID-19 class action, our criminal case in The Hague, Holland. Support our other cases. Become part of our Justice League. Get up off the couch, do something, and turn off people like Sean Hannity and Newsmax and get to work. God bless you. God bless your family. God save America. And he will if we're true to God. I'll be back next week. Thank you for listening to me.